And welcome back to the Nose Plays Endless Space 2. For those of you who are still interested in seeing the end of my Riftborn campaign, I'm probably not going to continue the actual gameplay of that campaign, but I do have plans to revisit the Riftborn and sort of review in a short video everything that I learned about playing them and what I think I could improve on from the strategies that I adapted after just a couple of games with them. Today is going to be a little bit different video as well because I don't have a great grasp of the Hissho. I have not played them very much off camera at all, and so I don't really have a super good idea of the strategy. So this first video in particular might be a little bit slower in terms of the gameplay and just a lot of me talking things out. If you are in the stream, feel free to jump in the chat and give me some suggestions and thoughts on my thinking as I talk out loud in real time to you guys about this faction, because this is a faction that I think is pretty cool. They were one of the coolest factions in the original Endless Space game, and then were later added obviously as an expansion similar to the Vaulters. I'm really curious to see if I can come up with a strategy that works super well for these guys, and I have some vague memories of SB and a few other YouTubers who figured out some really broken mechanics at one point in time using this faction. I don't know if any of those mechanics still work. I know it had something to do with the way that they have some unique stuff where they funnel things back to their main capital. So I'll have to see if I can figure out what people were doing, because I don't remember the details and I haven't gone back and watched any videos on it. But that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right into the game. I will give you a quick overview of my settings. You can pause the video if you want to take a look at them. And here we go. So, the main thing that I get from the Hissho, and the thing that I noticed when I did play a little bit off camera, is they have to be super aggressive to be successful. There's a few really big mistakes that you can make that seem to cripple you if you do the wrong thing. So we'll talk about that briefly because I have experienced that a few times. But yeah, they're just a really aggressive, very militaristic faction, and I don't know if you can really afford to play them any other way. I do have a couple of early game strategies that I use for most factions, and this one in particular works really well for these guys. But before we get to actually playing the game, let's talk a little bit about their traits and what I think of each trait, and then some of their unique technologies. So the Hissho were really interesting in Endless Space 1. They had some of the best ships in the game. They particularly benefited from pilots, from fighter aircraft. They had bonuses to fighters and bombers. They were really good with fighters and bombers in the first game. They also had a weird mechanic where they were unable to retreat ever. They just literally had no retreat option. They've done away with that in this version of the game, but they still have a penalty for retreating, so that's interesting. We'll talk a little bit about Key. Is how I'm going to pronounce whatever this resource is that sort of replaces approval. 40% key gained after space battles under the key zone of behemoths. Behemoths are really important to this faction. They actually start with a behemoth. It's pretty inept in many ways until you unlock the ability to retrofit it, but it can be useful against pirates and a few other things in the early game. We start with a religious, semi-aggressive robot as our minor civ that offer extra influence on hot worlds, and we start on a hot world, so that's really good synergy, so that's not bad. Sacred Traditions, this is the one that replaces the key with all the approval buildings. Everything that gives approval in the game basically gets modified. So that's important to be aware of. And also, it speaks in this particular thing about seeing the path and destination of fleets of empires we're at war with. I haven't really paid much attention to that, and I don't know how useful it'll be, but it's definitely going to be useful at some point in the game if I ever remember to utilize it. And I think the way that you would utilize it is clicking on a ship that you have vision of probably shows you where it's heading, maybe. But I actually haven't tried this. I've always forgotten about it. Observances. With every election, a new observance becomes available. Sacrificing a population will give your empire the effects of the observance. This is the mechanic that's really weird. So they have a special sacrificial buff that they can get, and it rotates between different ones every turn or so, and then cycles back to the original one. So it's like seasonal almost. I don't know at what point in the game this makes sense to do, because sacrificing population is hugely detrimental to your early game. There definitely is a point where it's not as bad, but one of the problems with the sacrifice of population mechanics in all of the factions, whether it's like the conscription one that you get early on, or some of the other ones, is that it completely soaks 100% of your industry for the turn. And I really wish that the game would allow you to roll over your inventory into the next turn or something, and not just completely lose it whenever you use one of these population sacrificial things, because that seems to be what happens with all of them, and it's really, really bad, like super, super bad, until you reach maybe a certain point in the game where industry just isn't that important. And there definitely are those points in the game, but if you're not aware of that and you're using this at the wrong time, it's going to set you back economically in huge fashion. The buffs are rarely going to offset the output that you would gain from a single population. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. But I don't know when this is going to be good. That's part of the problem with this faction and figuring them out. Pirate Slayers, they're really good at slaying pirates. They get extra loot when they do. They cannot communicate with pirates, which is fine. Resource Recoverers. So they get special mining probes that can collect FIDs off of planets, which are neat. The probes stay on the planet, and the ship, the behemoth ship that carries them, does not have to stay in that system to collect the resources. If you expand too aggressively, this becomes less valuable, and you lose some of the benefit of it. There are also upgrades to this that make it more valuable. And this is another one of those things where I understand that it gives you resources. I don't know what the best way to optimize it is. I think that there are better modules for optimizing, but one of the things that's important is you need to keep your behemoths sort of on the front lines of your military war, because there are a lot of benefits that behemoths and the zone of influence that they add give you for war. And so eventually your war is going to extend beyond your empire. You'll need to either build multiple behemoths or move your behemoths forward in order to maintain those benefits. And we'll see some of those in a little bit. We start with a free behemoth. +1 behemoth production limit on empires, so we always get one extra behemoth compared to everyone else. We start with xenolinguistics, which is awesome because that's one of the best starting techs in the game. And we start with rare earth foams, which is one of the least good starting techs in the game. We also start with a really high approval on turn 1, which is interesting because we do still get the bonuses. So we're getting 15% extra dust and science, as well as 15% extra food and influence, I believe, on our home system right now. So that's good. Let's go ahead and jump over to our laws. We do start with a dictatorship, which is nice for various reasons. When you're playing a very, very aggressive military faction, being a dictatorship is good because a lot of the approval penalties that you would normally get for playing super aggressive, you don't actually worry about because you get to ignore them. This is an interesting law that I really like running. This just gives you 25% extra FIDSy, all types including influence, but it comes at the cost of approval every turn. And so this is a really powerful law that is oftentimes very beneficial to run, but knowing when to turn it off and when to turn it on can be tricky. This one I think you should be running most of the time, as long as you have enough key to keep your population happy. The Hissho Holiday Act is the replacement for Toys for Boys. It does not provide the same bonuses, but it does have the same penalty. So this is a minus 10% industry on all systems, but you get bonus key for fighting, which is nice, and you get an even bigger bonus key if you are inside of your behemoth key zone, which we'll look at here shortly. A lot of these... That's weird. That seems like a bug. The high Syac, minus 2 key, no effect. Not sure what's going on with that. Yeah, the tooltip looks weird. So this one is actually giving you plus 2 science per population at a cost of minus 2 key per turn. And then this one is plus 3 dust per population at a cost of minus 2 key per turn. We'll probably start off by running this hatched from home. It's pretty good. And then just a quick look, these are randomized, so we have Blue Cap Mold and it looks like Dark Glitter as our 2 population boosters. They get extra population growth and industry. At 20, they get more planetary defense on systems. And at 50, ship cost is reduced significantly. They're really, really good at building ships. Our minor civilization is religious, but they also have a slant towards militaristic, so that works well with our faction. And they also have a bonus to influence, and then unlocks Fist of Fear Edict, which is plus 5% influence per war. I'm not sure if that's a law, but I think it is. So we'll get to that. I'm not crazy about this minor civ, but the influence is actually kind of nice in the early game because we do start with a hot world. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of the unique technologies, but we will go through the first couple that they start with that make a difference to us. So any technology that has this symbol is going to be somewhat unique to the Hissho. And so this version of the building gives you 10% troop health on Empire, which is nice for ground battles. All your military units will survive a little bit better. And then it gives you the normal ash technology that's associated with that. Moving over here, we've got a unique one here. This one is tied to a behemoth, so we can't really mess with it right now. This one is just straight up worse than the traditional one. There's actually no benefit, but you lose the extra approval, so it's just bad. Over here, there's a couple of them. Actually, I can't get those yet, but we'll talk about this one. So the normal approval building has been replaced by one that gives influence instead, which can be helpful if you need influence. We don't really need influence. The main thing you need influence for in the early game is like starting wars or things like that. You can also use it for minor civs, but because you have to play aggressively with your faction, attacking minor civs is better, and a lot of times you get to declare war for free when you're a militaristic faction. So this doesn't help us as much as it could. And that's about it in the early game. We'll talk about the other ones as we unlock them. But yeah, so nothing too exciting in the early game there in terms of unique technologies. There are a couple. Actually, I will point out one just because we didn't talk about anything useful. This is the first unique technology here that I think actually has some merit. I've often wondered why the AI, when they play Hissho, always seems to get swarm missiles. And after playing them, I understand why. And it's not because their swarm missiles are better, but it's actually because they get this module, which is an upgraded version of the A2S slug. It does slightly more siege damage per turn. And so you can build fewer dedicated siege ships, but get the same amount of destruction, so to speak. And so we'll probably be taking advantage of that, which does lead us into this. Also, kinetic enhancer is nice if you have swarm missiles, because swarm missiles are kind of under-damaged weapons. They don't do a lot of damage. So having the kinetic enhancer give them a little boost can be helpful. Alright, we'll just clear all of this out. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is our hero. And this is another aspect of this faction that I haven't quite figured out what the most reasonable placement for him is. 99% of the time I would say that the most reasonable place for your hero is going to be as a governor for your starting hero. There are a few exceptions to that, and this might be one of those at times that this is an exception, but it's hard for me to make that call because they have so many early game abilities that are great for a governor, but then they have a lot of late game abilities that are great for a fleet commander. This might be one of the few times where you actually transition your hero from a governor to a fleet commander at some point in the game. But I think many times it's just easier to pick up a also good fleet commander and just leave him as a governor. So I don't know. The ones that make me really like this hero is we have a hot system 100% of the time. So this is always going to give 10 industry right out the gate, which is good. And it could be even more depending on what the rest of the system planets you roll in your starting system are. So this is great, one of the best starting hero abilities in the game. This one is also good. Extra food and extra industry are also fantastic. 10% extra dust is decent at a certain point of the game, and especially when it can double to 20%. We'll get to that here in a second, and then your normal ones. I'm not going to talk about these ones because these are pretty common to everybody. Let's see. This one is, I don't really have much to say about that, but this is what makes him interesting as a fleet commander. Once you get out to this third tier, you can get 20% damage on fleet, which is pretty awesome. 20% hull plating absorption is kind of meh. 15% industry on system, also awesome for governor. Plus 6 movement on fleet is really amazing. And then behemoth production limit increased by 1, which gives you 2 more behemoths than any other faction in the game, and also a reduction in the cost of behemoths. Their final tech, crit chance and damage per ship level. So if you have ships that are really high leveled. So you can see some of these abilities are really amazing. 25% damage on fleet, bigger is better battle strategy, and 33% shield capacity. There's some real potential to make him a very powerful hero in the late game as a fleet commander, but there's also a lot of abilities that really benefit particularly the early game as a governor. He also has a starting ability of minus 5% ship cost, which is great. And then the shield penetration is kind of bad. That does lend him to maybe want to consider energy weapons early, if you were to use him as a military commander. He also has what I consider the worst hero ship in the game. This ship design is terrible in my opinion. It does have 4 weapon slots, which seems like it would be good, but because this counts as a small class ship, these 4 weapon slots are not particularly useful in the mid to late game. They just don't do enough. Having extra support slots is way more valuable for your heroes, because the support modules actually benefit in many ways more significantly than an extra really low weapon, small class weapon module, at least in my opinion. So I don't like this, and one that I don't like for my fleet commander, but yeah. Okay, I think we're finally ready to start the game, and one of the things that we get to do that's different from other factions is once we get enough ki, we can activate these boosters for a brief period of time. Some of them have costs that require, like titanium, for instance. This one requires Hyperium. They're all pretty much military boosts except for this one, which actually is a system-wide industry boost, which is huge. So this again can make them real industry powerhouses. You could almost see them doubling as an industrialist faction, and in fact there may be some merit to switching your governor from military to industrialist at some point in the game, with as much industry as they're able to produce. I don't know for sure whether that really works, but it's something that I would be interested in experimenting with at some point. But these boosters you can activate once you have an appropriate level of ki, so we can't boost this one until we get a little bit more ki, it looks like. We also have to have the, or sorry, not the ki. We don't need the ki, we need the titanium. So once we get a little titanium, we could actually run this booster. And we do start with the titanium technology, but unfortunately none in our home system that we know of. This one enhances ground battles, and again, as far as I can tell, the effect is essentially doubled if you're in the behemoth key zone. And just to explain what that means, every behemoth we build has this little bubble called the key zone that is the same color as this resource, and if you are inside of this bubble, several effects are enhanced. So for example, there you go. Things like this are doubled. This one increases the values of some of these things even more. So it's pretty useful, but I'm not quite sure how useful. I don't think I have too much more to talk about in terms of the unique faction traits. A lot of this is just me talking it out so I remember it. So maybe I'll leave a timestamp in the video to kind of skip all of the rhetoric. If you're already familiar with the Hissho and you just want to see me play them, we'll put a timestamp at whatever time we're at here, 24 minutes into the game, where I'm actually going to start playing the faction. And the first thing that I'm going to do with this faction is I'm going to create a brand new ship design. This is something that I do with almost all factions now. I think it's the best way to start the game off. And we're going to build what I call Roadrunners. I think this is a particularly apt name for what the ship is going to do. We're going to build them out of the Colony class ship. And the reason I'm going to build them out of the Colony class ship is because the Colony class ship has 3 support modules. And all we're going to do is put 3 of our high-speed support modules. And maybe I need to relook at the value of starting with rare earth foams, because I believe rare earth foams is what gives us this better engine to start the game with. This allows us to get a ship with a movement of 12 that only has 140 industry cost. So that's actually really, really good, and we can build these and get them out really, really fast. Now, there is a faster way to get them out. You can build them with fewer engines or no engines, and then add the engines on as a retrofit, but that costs dust. And so it depends on how much dust we're actually going to end up having, whether we want to do that. The other thing to keep in mind is we definitely have some other uses for our dust. So, and the other thing is that we can get right out the gate an industry reduction to shipbuilding, and so that can actually save us a little bit more time and a little bit more dust. Joe Coco has made a comment here to the side who says, giving Samurai Birds another go, I see. Never quite got the hang of them, but back when they came out, they were plenty 50-turn win games as them. I can see that. Most of the factions, when they first come out, have some kind of broken mechanic that people can quickly figure out how to take advantage of. I have not seen them be overpowered in my own games, but keep in mind I pretty much exclusively play against the AI, so that's almost impossible. And the few times that I have played around with them, I don't think I've really figured them out. I do think that this is one of the best starts for them, though, building a couple of road runners. So we're definitely going to do that. Let's take a look at our first system and see how lucky we were on our roll. It's not a terrible roll. So we did start with Hyperion, which is okay. We have 2 curiosities. One is Subterranean, which actually gives me hope that maybe we have Titanium in this system. And if we did get lucky enough to start with Titanium and Hyperion, that would be helpful. We only got 1 extra hot planet, and it's a lava world that's not particularly large, it looks like, so that kind of sucks. The temperate is okay, monsoon world, but not great. And then you always start with this hot, fertile jungle. Hot, fertile, I'm not sure if jungles always are hot, fertile. I can't remember. But we always start with a hot, fertile world, so the hot benefits our Miner Civ and our hero. And so could be really, really good for us. The very first thing that I want to do is I want to get 2 Roadrunners out as quickly as possible. So we're going to jump right to Roadrunners. We're going to bypass all of the important industry buildings and the cerebral reality for these Roadrunners. And the reason that I want to rush Roadrunners with this faction has to do with the key and how key works. Multiplayer is desync city, says Joe Coco. In my experience, it's honestly not worth the frustration to get it working. I completely agree with that. Endless Legend has some issues with desyncing as well. What is actually quite surprising is the original Endless Space 1 game, upon its final release with Disharmony, I played it a handful of times in multiplayer and basically never had a desync issue. So I don't know if the game is just simpler and easier to netcode for, but the old game actually was really, really stable, and I'd always hoped that at some point Amplitude would get their shit together and actually fix the desyncing in games like Dungeon of the Endless, Endless Legend, and Endless Space 2, but from my experience, they have not. So it just hasn't been much fun to play them in that format. Although at some point I'd like to give it a try again and see if we can get it to work. Maybe with some viewers one of these days. That would be fun. Okay. But we're going to get our Roadrunners out, and I'm going to find some ways to hopefully enhance the speed at which that happens. Also, because I do have a couple of curiosities, I am going to go ahead and attach my hero to my first scout ship. I'm and let's talk a little bit about our scout ships. These ships are garbage. I don't like them. They're some of the worst scout ships in the game, in my opinion, partially because they only have 2 support modules. 2 support modules and 2 guns are not good enough for a scout class ship. We'll just have to sort of make do with them. They're okay as an aggressive military ship in the early game, which is what I think you're supposed to use them as. But if you do that, then they suck as scout ships because you don't have enough support slots to run probes. You really need to run either a manpower module or some other type of weapon enhancing module to make them effective as military ships. So they're just bad. Don't use these, get away from them. The other thing that's weird about these ships, and a lot of their ships, honestly, is they don't have any forward-mounted turrets, and I haven't talked very often about forward-mounted versus broadside-mounted weaponry. I've had a few conversations with viewers about that in the comment section of a couple videos now. There is a significant advantage to a forward-mounted weapon. It has a better firing arc, and so it's more likely to attack. You'll notice that sometimes you'll be in situations in combat where your guns just won't be firing because you don't have a firing arc. And it's impossible to predict from the beginning of the battle which weapons are going to point which direction until the fight starts, and then you have no control over moving them or adjusting them in any way. So it's a very frustrating aspect of this game that I wish they would find a way to fix. I have heard of a few modders that have attempted to do this, and I have not tested out any of their mods, but that's something I'm interested in doing down the line. So if you're aware of any good combat mods for Endless Space 2 that fix the combat system a little bit, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on what they are and how you like them. But yeah, we're not going to use these ships to scout. We're going to use the Roadrunners instead. Roadrunners are going to get way more done in the early game than these ever will. And coming back to my reasoning why Roadrunners are so important, exploring the galaxy actually generates ki. So discovering and conquering systems both give you ki, and so having 2 Roadrunners running around the galaxy and revealing systems left and right is one of the ways that we're going to be successful with these guys. And it's how we're going to keep our early approval up, even though we want to run the law that gives us negative approval. So even though we're losing 1 ki or approval per turn, we're going to generate more than that every turn through our Roadrunners once they get constructed, and we're able to keep this at a higher value than we otherwise would, which is nice. Let's just go ahead and attach our hero to this scout ship real quick, and then we'll retrofit once we do the scouting. We only have 2 probes, but we only have 2 curiosities, so okay, blue cap mold is interesting, and that's actually one of the worst possible rolls. 5 experience, no reward, no anomaly, no strategics. That's terrible. The blue cap mold is somewhat interesting strictly because our Hissho use blue cap mold as their booster. And so we can actually activate this now and get a little bit of extra industry for the next few turns. So that's actually kind of lucky in a sense. Unfortunately, blue cap mold as a system development is probably one of the ones I like the least. And it's the only one at the moment that we're guaranteed to have some supply of come time to upgrade our system. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this big boy. So the Behemoth has a lot of health and not much else. The 36 attack, it's running a very, very poor flak cannon. Not very good for military use. It can defend a system and it can shoot down you know, single pirates and a few other things pretty safely, but it's not going to be used very aggressively in the early game. It's mainly going to be used for this mining probe that you start with. And what the mining probe allows us to do is if we throw it down on a system, we get 15% of its base fidsies, and those get funneled back to our primary capital. So this is pretty powerful, pretty interesting, and it's especially good in the early game if you find a lava world, because lava worlds have such high industry that you actually get a reasonable amount of industry from it. There are a few other planet types that are pretty good that you can throw it on, and that's one way to use it. Another way to use it is it will actually collect luxuries and strategics on other planets. So if I mouse over this, you can see that I can actually start collecting Hyperium and a small amount of blue cap mold mushrooms, along with the very, very tiny bits of fidsi that we get at this point in the game. There are ways to enhance this probe and make it more valuable, or to get extra ones, but there are also other effects. And one of the effects that is not clear without clicking on this to see is that we start with this. So this is actually generating 10 of all of the base fidsies except for influence. And it's basically going to be really important that we keep this on our home system in the early game to benefit from those extra resources. So we could use this ship to scout, but I think the lost industry that you're going to get from just leaving it here is way too much to make that viable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my probe, and I think we're going to go ahead and grab the industry right now, and we may come back to grab the Hyperium and the blue cap mold at some point, but right now I want to get this going. And you can see this little probe running around picking up free loot for us, basically. Along with this means we're actually generating something like 12 extra industry on the system, which is pretty significant in the early game. Our brood ship, I don't really know where we want to send it just yet, but I think I am going to go ahead and roll the dice and pick a lane just to get a little bit of scouting done. Okay, that wasn't terrible. So this actually might work out for us. 2 planets with blue cap mold have some benefit. The titanium definitely has some benefit. And having this settled on turn 1 means we'll be able to actually get it done quicker, and it's really close to our home system. We could look for a better opportunity, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and grab this now. One of the things that we'll struggle with a little bit in the early game is dust, and that's because I build a lot of ships in the early game, and the military upkeep gets pretty high at times, which can be problematic. Not having this ship soak up a little bit of dust for a few turns is actually good for us. So another interesting thing is that these guys generate outposts into colonies a little bit different than everybody else. They straight up buy it out, and this number will go down over time based on how we funnel resources to this system. But at any point in time, if we have enough key, we can buy this out. The problem with doing that, and this is the trap that I've gotten into in the past, is if you buy this out, this number will literally tank all the way to basically 0. And what this does is this essentially is our new approval. So you have to think of this like approval. If we tank our approval to 0, we're going to have huge percent penalties to a lot of our fidsi output, and it's just not worth it. So even though I could get 2 systems up on turn 1 essentially, and start the game with 2 systems, I don't know that the value of that outweighs the penalties, and the way that you get key back, besides exploration and battles, which are difficult to initiate in the early game, is by sacrificing population. And that just doesn't work. It would take way too many population sacrifices to get this amount of key back, or to even just get out of the negative. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to let this timer tick down. This number will continue to drop, and then once it gets to a reasonable amount, and we're like near the top of our pool here, because I believe we can only hit 100. And once we hit 100, like, it's maxed out, we don't get any more. So we want to spend this like before we get to 100, but not when it's going to cost us so much that it puts us down into the negative zone for outputs. We want to keep these percent bonuses and avoid the percent penalties as much as possible. So we'll let that just do its thing for a while. That ensures that we do have titanium in the future, which allows us to run this law, which would be good. The other thing that I could do is we could send the behemoth over here and mine for some titanium, but again, losing 40 Finzi on this system just isn't worth it in my opinion, because 10 from the bonus, you can see plus 10 food from the bonus. It doesn't specifically say it's from that behemoth, but that's where it's coming from, and so we want to get that going. Let's see, these guys use their probes, so they can't move. I do need to retrofit my hero. We want to give him a little bit faster engine and a probe so we can generate probes a little quicker. And then I'm going to pull all the weapons off of him, just because there's nothing to fight right now, and this will make the upgrade cost a little bit cheaper. And that way we'll generate probes a little more quickly if we do end up searching more. This can go into guard mode, because we're just going to stay here for now. And these guys can just skip the rest of their turn. And technology. Alright, we need to pick a technology. One obvious choice is this. We have a Hyperium deposit in our system and a planet that will benefit from this building, so that could be good. Tundra World is going to be necessary, and this is a good building at some point in the game. But I think one of the most important technologies in the early game for the Hissho is going to be this one. And the reason that I say that is warp drives allow your roadrunners to get off of your constellation once you get it completely uncovered and onto other ones. And that's going to be important to maintaining our slow but steady income of key from exploration. And exploration is a huge part of what keeps your key from falling off a cliff. So getting this early is important. I don't know if it's important enough to rush it, but we would get it in 4 turns. So that's one option. I really don't like this technology. I don't think influence is that valuable early game, but this one isn't terrible. Growing population fast might be the way that you offset the penalty for sacrificing them occasionally, and because we start with a hot world, this building is immediately more useful to us than it is to a lot of other civilizations. This also gets us to our Tier 1 military ships a little quicker. And of the 2 choices, it's the better choice in my opinion. And then finally, the military techs. I like ubiquitous surveillance because I like big data shipyards, and I like having the option to outfit ships with manpower, essentially. This building is pretty useless in the early game, though can be necessary in the mid to late game, and this effect is pretty useless We already have an effect that sucks population away from us. We don't really need another one. So I wouldn't go for this tech early. Grabbing this does unlock all of these lovely techs and more command points for bigger fleets, as well as this tech, which we talked about briefly earlier, and this tech, which makes invasions a lot easier. And then we have access to these. I like galactic commodities that can solve your dust problems early on. And because we generate so much industry in the early game, unique buildings like this one actually can be really decent as well. Population should grow pretty quickly in our home system. One thing that we didn't look at were the deeds. Be the first to possess 20 star system improvements. That's possible for us because of our high industry. And then this one is a Jadonics reward, which I really like. Be the first to search 10 curiosities. This one should be one we really try to get. 75 Jadonics is enough for 3 systems to get planetary upgrades to the next tier. And so I think that's one that we might want to spend a little bit of time focusing on. Jokoko has made another comment saying Shipyards is low-key one of the best military techs. It makes your ship start off with way beefier for free. I agree. 40 XP basically gives them a free level when they come out. And leveling up your ships increases all their stats slightly. So they're just better overall. Not immediately obvious if you don't pay attention to the stats. I think I'm going to actually rush this for 2 reasons. Number 1, this is good, as I already mentioned. But number 2, advanced scanners means we're going to uncover more curiosities quicker, and that will give us more opportunities to potentially hit the 10 before anybody else. And also, in the very early game, I need curiosities to try to level my hero up. So we're going to see if maybe getting these revealed gives me more ways to do that. And that's only going to take 4 turns, which is great. Anything else that I want to do this turn? I know it's been kind of a slow turn 1, obviously with me reviewing the entire faction. But again, that was more for my benefit than for yours. I think we're in a pretty good spot. I think you'll be amazed at how well these Roadrunners do. There is a potential to kind of get a really crappy constellation, and depending on your settings in the game, you can influence that one way or the other. But if we end up on a fairly large constellation, they're really super effective. I don't think there's much we're going to be doing this turn. I can fly these guys over here. There are no more curiosities for us to search on this system, and we can make it to this one in a single turn. So we will wait here for some probes. I do have the option of switching my law and getting lower fleet cost law in effect, which reduces the cost of ships by 15%. But getting 25% more industry right now, I think actually reduces the cost, or it reduces the amount of time it takes to build them faster than that other law would. It is coming at a price, though. We are losing key, and until we get our Roadrunners out, that's going to be a thing, unfortunately. But as long as we're at the loyal, I think it's okay. Unless we're going to drop below that, it's probably okay to keep running it the way it is. I don't think there's anything else for us to do this turn, so that was a quick turn 2 after a very long turn 1. Alright, you can see we are sending off small amounts of food. Again, the amount of food is kind of irrelevant. What actually happens is each time food gets here, this number goes down a little bit. So that's helpful to some extent. And this will happen relatively quickly because of the short distance that these ships have to travel, which is good. We can get this guy out and deployed, and I will show you the power of Roadrunners. Go ahead and get him on his way. Look at that. Look at that travel distance. Not bad. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just set it and forget it. So we'll just put him to auto-explore from this point on, and he'll just keep going down this lane until he uncovers everything. And then he'll immediately turn back around and go find somewhere else to explore. At some point, we are going to need to use our one Peregrine with probes to uncover another constellation. And since we're rushing baryonic shielding, he'll then be able to jump over there and search that out as well. And that is all one turn of movement. So you can see how having two of these is going to be very effective. These guys have probes now, so we can search these. I can get this uncovered and hope we get a good roll. Okay. So this is an even better system strategically now. We've got both strategics on that planet, so I feel a little bit better about grabbing a two-planet system than I otherwise would. We also have one probe left and 4 movement, so I'm actually going to save the probe and use the movement. We'll carry on down this lane, since it's pretty obvious that this is a long trip before anything significant happens. We did get our first point here, and with almost 100% certainty, I am sending him back to be a governor for the early game, which means I'm going to grab either this or this. This is more fidsy, 15 per point, but this one is more industry, 10 industry instead of 5. I don't think population growth is as important as industry right now, so I think I'm going to go ahead and put my first point here. And we'll see if we can't get one more level on him before his cooldown is up again. Alright. That's actually not bad for us. Looks like there's at least 3 curiosities over there. Mizar's already a dead end. So now I'm tempted to delay the construction of this second Roadrunner. In favor of an industry building, because we just don't need him until we have more to scout. Yeah, I'm going to delay. I could get a little bit of a head start with this other Roadrunner completing in 1 turn. Do I want to do that? I guess we'll go ahead and finish it. What I might actually do is I'm going to tell this guy to stop here, and we may retrofit that Roadrunner into a colony ship and use it to colonize the next system we find. That might be a better use of his time, rather than waiting until I get a probe that hits somebody else. Yeah, we'll go with that for now. Not the greatest starting. I like to start into more of a cluster with these guys. We're kind of on a string, if you will, which is a little bit less good. So baryonic shielding's about to be completed. What needs to be next on my list? I don't think we're ready to build military ships yet. But if we wanted to be, I guess this is the next tech. Alright. So I've already dealt with that. Our probe has ended. There's a 1-turn cooldown in between being able to launch it again. Alright, build 2 ships with at least 257 defensive power to gain a random technology and 5 key, or assimilate a new minor faction. We have not discovered any minor factions yet. I'm going to see if we can wait till the end of this turn. I guess it's not really going to matter because I'm not going to uncover anything new. So I won't actually see any minor civs. I do have 3 probes though. That is going to get us really close to 10. I like ruins a lot. I like subterranean a lot. Let's do the 2 subterranean. Basic shielding, okay. And the analytical engine. And then we'll search the ruins. 10 XP. Alright. We're gonna wait 1 turn and try to get that last curiosity out of curiosity. That put us at 6, so we only need 4 more in order to complete that deed. There's a decent chance we could get that. I think we're going to go with strength because I know we're going to build ships soon. And I already have a design in mind for my ships. Alright, anything else that I want to do? We got to wait 1 turn for this probe to regenerate and then we can deploy it again. But I think we're in a good spot. Nothing worse than finding ship XP, says the chat. That's actually not true. There is actually the chance to find nothing, which is actually worse than ship XP. Only slightly so, but actually worse. Okay. So I think retrofitting this other Roadrunner into an actual colony ship does make sense, because we can grab Mayal. And Mayal is a 5-planet system, which is almost never terrible, right? Unless they're all gas worlds. We have 1 gas and 1 barren. But we also have a monsoon, and we have 3. We have the 4. So these are the 4. If we get these 4 curiosities uncovered, we're definitely going to finish that quest first, which I feel really good about now. Yeah. So I think rushing the tech to uncover more curiosities was the right choice. Granted, this is not going to be the right choice every game, but it did make sense for us here. And actually, we uncovered another one here, it looks like, too. So, cool. Did we uncover any on our home system? We did. And 1 over here. But none down in Mizar. Poor Mizar. What a shit world. Crap system. Probably not worth colonizing at all. It's on the very end of our string, so there's unlikely that anybody else is going to get on it anyways. Probably just leave it. Alright, definitely going to wait but we have a really good shot of finishing that quest now. I feel good about that. And then I did get this ship back here already because he's so dang quick. So what we're going to do is edit this design and just throw one of these on here instead of the engines. And we'll, boom, Roadrunner 2.0 with the ability to set a colony down. And we'll send him on his way to that system. Okay, just sit tight for a second. We are getting planetary landscaping, which leads us into military ships. I don't think there's anything else to do this turn. Oh, there is one other thing to do. Drop our probe. Okay. So now is the situation where do I want Hyperium more than I want industry? And I think the answer is no, I want the industry. So we'll just keep running that for the 2 industry that it provides. Not a lot, but is something. Let's take a peek here. The cost of this is down to 40 now. 40 is not low enough, but I think right around the time that we set the other outpost down, we'll go ahead and grab this. No! Are you kidding me? That's bullshit. It's going to be really hard for this faction to ever win this quest, just because they start with some of the shittiest scout ships in the game. Yeah, gas giants in the late game are good, but again, this is all of the close systems to us, so we're looking basically for early game at this point. Gas giants have their place for sure, though. They also tend to hold some of the rare strategics more frequently than other planet types, it seems. And so having them around your early system can actually lead to having good strategics later in the game. So there is also that. It's not a guarantee, but it seems to be, in my experience. And that feels bad. We were like 2 turns away from getting that quest. That would have really been nice because we would have had enough Jadonics for 1, 2, 3 systems. But now we're not. We did get our hero another level, and I am going to go ahead and put it in here. So now we're going to get basically 20 industry when he hits, which is not insignificant. Make sure I actually, yeah. A lot of times I forget to hit the apply button. This planetary anomaly has a beneficial effect on the planets, but it doesn't tell me what it is. Okay. Interesting. I don't remember what that anomaly actually does. It might be related to planetary defenses. I can't believe that. That was like turn 6. Somebody got 10 curiosities in 6 turns. I don't think we could have played this more efficiently in terms of curiosity searching. looks like we have the Riftborn nearby. Okay. So I am thinking before we build military ships, we want to build the big data shipyards, which will give us better plans for ships. So we'll grab that next. We did unlock the Endless Research Park. And we have unlocked the quest to give us behemoth techs. So once we get 18 military techs, behemoth technology will be unlocked. Once we research the behemoth technology, we get a really cool bonus, which we'll look at later. And in addition to that, we also get the ability to retrofit our current behemoth and actually give it some reasonable weapons, defenses, movement, all that good stuff. So we should definitely consider that. So we'll be done with this.
We are Riftborn. We come into your cosmos on a mission of survival.
Industry and dust on the fossils, huh? I'm not sure why it's not actually showing us what the tech does. That's kind of weird. Could be a bug of some kind, I don't know. Alright, we're about to complete the construction of this building. So now it's time to look at what buildings do we want to build, if any, and not another ship. I could build another scout ship and finish picking up the curiosities that sort of backfilled into our system. If we wait for the other ship to do it, it's going to take an awful long time. I could also just keep steamrolling into industry, which just makes everything else happen faster. And then that building's just really efficient. 30 fidsies, both of which are ones we don't have a lot of right now. Probably a good enough decision. Alright, I got 3 curiosities that I can uncover here. Titanium load is actually good. I definitely have a plan for that. Alright, and at this point, I think I can bring my hero back here. However, I could also wait 1 turn and get the last curiosity for some free XP. And since heroes basically don't get XP except when buildings get constructed on systems as a governor, and this building isn't actually going to get finished for 1 turn, I think we can do that. So we'll be 1 turn late, but we'll get a little bit more XP than we otherwise would have. Also, our Roadrunner made it over here, so now it's time to see. I think 30 is okay. 30 is going to bring us down to 46. 46 should be above the penalty line. But we are losing a point every turn from running the law. So we might have to cancel our law if we do that. So now the question is, do we wait a little bit longer? Because I really like the 25% fidsies. I think we're going to wait a little bit longer, and I'm going to run both of these. That's really going to hurt us food-wise, though. Ooh, and this is a tough choice. Actually, it's not that tough of a choice. This is the better choice. This is better for two reasons. Number one, food and industry here are both pretty reasonable. 7 and 3 versus 8 and 2. I like 7 and 3 better. But more importantly, as an outpost, we will start collecting these resources, where over here we get nothing. So that is the better option. And again, this starts at 75 and will tick down. The rate at which it ticks down, I haven't quite figured out how that works. Like, each load of food doesn't seem to bring it down the same way that... It's not the same math that you use for the other factions. Alright. Let's take a look here at how our systems are doing. So, by turn 9, we've already accumulated over 100 in industry per turn. Quarter of that's coming from the colony base. 26.2 off of the planet. That's going to be from our population. 20 from Xeno-Industrial Infrastructure. 20 from percent bonuses. That's going to be our law. And then a flat 10 from the behemoth just sitting in space above our system. So that's all pretty decent. We are going to want to build that scout ship, I think. We'll finish grabbing curiosities here, and we can send him down here with probes to try to catch something, and then maybe build another roadrunner to jump over there. So I think that's going to be kind of, sort of, here on the priority list. And actually, before I put that in the queue, let's edit the ship design and see if there's anything we can do to make this more reasonable. I can't give it a better engine. I can't give it a better probe. I would be able to give it better weapons in a couple turns, but this isn't really a ship for fighting. And I could give it some shielding or some hull plating. This was an upgraded module that we found, so it's probably reasonably good. Good enough. We'll see how many turns it takes. I may pull that off. It adds too much industry to the build. We just need to get it out quick. It doesn't have to do much but scout. Alright. Got a population. Gained, so that's good. Mining operation has ended. That means we're going to have to wait one turn to launch the probe again. Out of curiosity, we're still positive on food, even when running 2. We're sending 35.9 to outposts, but because of all of our other bonuses, we're actually able to keep our heads above water on food. So yeah, running 2 is not that detrimental yet. We're down to 24 here. That could be completed. That would drop us to like 50. I'll have to think about that. Moving up here. Ah, we actually didn't generate a probe. So waiting an extra turn was kind of a waste. I can sort of salvage that by doing this. That way he won't miss out on the XP for either of these buildings. But it will delay resources in the system for a couple of turns, so I don't know that that was actually worth it. One turn it might have been worth it. 2 turns, probably not. Alright, let's see. How is our little Roadrunner doing? Quite well, actually. This is a long constellation. Also, just out of curiosity, 15% influence is the bonus for this one. We can see that they've already got their second system down. Perhaps it is time for us to get ours as well. Is turn 10 too early for this? I don't think so. I think we'll go ahead and do it. We'll start with the basic buildings and then figure it out from there. Alright, I need to remember, because it doesn't give me an alert when the probe is available, it only gives me an alert when the probe has ended. I need to remember to click on this again. At this point, I'm strongly considering moving the behemoth over here. I can get away with that because this is our system, so we still benefit from the 10 flat resources on one of our systems. But more importantly, I can deposit the mine here, and we'll get a little extra food and science and dust. Not anything great that way, but we will collect the luxury resource and the strategic resource. And specifically titanium, I'm a little behind on. So I got to decide whether I want to accelerate the growth of this system or just leave the behemoth here and keep accelerating the growth of our main system. I think it makes sense to keep it here for now. Because we want to build our fleet, and our fleet is going to get built out of this system. The faster we can get our fleet together, the faster we can go crush the Riftborn. Fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have any pirates, and we don't have any miner civs to deal with. So, yeah, just getting military going against the Riftborn looks like the way that it's going to have to be. And we'll just keep popping it on the industry-based system for that sweet, sweet industry. And we can get this done now. And actually, I'm going to separate these two, and I'm going to send him down the lane so that he gets his full movement. And then I'll use his one probe to finish scouting this. That was a little min-maxy thing there. Ah, here you go. This is the one thing that's worse than just flat ship XP. So all of that, he still gets XP for the search, which is nice. But we actually got nothing useful out of that. And then we'll just add him and his 20 industry. Free flat 20 at turn 11 to that system. You can see we went from 100 to 134 in just like 1 or 2 turns there. Not bad. Population booster has ended. We can keep it running. That keeps the industry up. And actually 138. Alright, all the rest of our ships can get moving. He's going to get both of these done in one turn. I still have sustainable labs to build here, but we do want this scout ship, and that's going to be done in 2 turns. This is going to be done in 1 turn. You can see we're already starting to struggle with dust, and I haven't even built my fleets yet. So I think maybe grabbing the analytical engine early might help some of that. The analytical engine can get done in 6 turns. Provides 1 dust per curiosity discovered, which is not nothing at this point, and it's going to get bigger as the game goes on. Yeah, let's do that. I probably will move this in front, but I'll redesign this with military weaponry from tier 2 after this turn. Alright, so we just unlocked all of these. That did help our dust a little bit, getting the cyber reality or whatever it is done. Wait a second, no curiosities here? Alright, so this might be a good time to send out a probe sort of this direction and see if we can't tag one of the other star lanes. We'll go scout their curiosities real quick. It looks like they've got their 2nd outpost down, so they're right on pace with us. We did find pirates. Pirates finally dropped on turn 12. And there was a pirate that dropped on Mizar, which is fine. There's like nothing I want down that way at the moment. I am kind of interested in settling Rassam. Unfortunately, the easiest planet to get on is a desert or a lava, neither of which are very easy to get on. But with the number of hot worlds in this system, it could be a really good industry system for us and help us build behemoths and other large ships quickly. We did fall to a point where we're lower than this now, so I can't actually activate this any longer. Just kind of unfortunate. And maybe means we should stop running this long. Also, you'll notice we're at -2 now, and that is because this is based on the number of colonized systems that we have. So it's -1 per colonized system. Systems with ancestral reverence don't count, which means I actually could run this unique building, which we'll talk about at some point. But we want to get the basics built here first, and then we'll talk about what this does. Oh, right. Technology time. Okay, well, there's a lot of things that we need. Man, that feels bad. Green, huh? Whoever Green is, they're already on my shit list. Alright, so I guess the question is it time to jump over here yet? I think probably we just get our military ships and start rolling. If we get the ships, it'll take us a while to build them. And we could build them with siege modules, or we could build them with manpower modules. But either way, I think getting tanks is going to be pretty important to us. Although maybe it is just siege modules, right? Siege modules, kinetic enhancers. Yeah, let's do that. Alright. Taking a look at this system, we're a long ways away from this one. Getting colonized. Nexus comments, thanks for all your videos, man. SB, 4X Alchemist, and yourself have improved my strategic gameplay immensely. Cheers, man. Hey, thanks a lot, Nexus. Appreciate that. I'm glad to be mentioned in such reverend company. We do have this quest still to do, and that's going to get done no problem. The question is, do I still want to finish the analytical engine? And I think the answer is no. I do want to finish it eventually, but I would rather get... Well... 5 turns away from efficient shielding, actually. Means that getting big data shipyards done in 2 turns. I don't really have any ships to build that are going to benefit. So I think what I'm actually going to do is get this guy retrofitted. We got better flak cannons. We'll just go with that. A little bit more likely to survive an engagement with certain pirates that he might encounter. And then we'll put him in front of the cube there. That looks good. I do need to consider not running this law for a while. But I could run this one because our influence is pretty good. And that should keep that at 2 turns. Yeah. So that's probably fine. And now you can see we're kind of stuck at 50. The downside of being at 50 is this is like having 50 approval, which means if we come over here, you can see we're no longer getting the bonuses on our empire that we were a little earlier. And that's one of the reasons why this number has sort of tanked. One of the reasons. One thing that you may or may not have noticed at this point in the game is that I haven't had any hacking going on. And one of the things that I've decided to experiment with a little bit is removing some of the DLC from my gameplay videos just to see how it feels, just to see if the comments that I've made to other viewers are correct in that they're not really necessary for a good Endless Space 2 experience, and in fact, in some cases, make for a better one. I felt a lot better about the games that I've played without the Awakening DLC. I think that one is garbage. I don't like the new Academy mechanics at all, and I have been disabling the Academy basically from the games as far as the Academy quest and everything. And that feels good. It still feels like a great game. Hacking is another system that I just don't really care for. It just feels sort of weird and not very intuitive. The only faction that really seems to play well with it is obviously the Penumbra, the Choir. Every other faction kind of gets it, but it's not really great on them, and they do some weird things. And the hacking to disable battle tactics and change governments and sleepers that suck your resources are all really... they're just not fun mechanics for me. I don't like them. At one point in time, the battle tactic that you used to do was so detrimental, it was basically an auto win. It still is pretty close to an auto win if you get it off on a system, as you've seen in some of my Riftborn engagements in some of the other games. So I wanted to try this game to just not have it and see how that feels. I do think that the vultures and the pirate mechanics that they added aren't terrible. The communication with pirates that you can do when the vultures DLC it doesn't really add a lot to the game, but it doesn't make a negative impact on the game. And then behemoths are an interesting one that definitely adds a layer to the game that I need to get better at playing with. So that's one of the reasons why we're playing with the Hissho today, so I can learn how to use behemoths a little more. And I think that adds in a mostly positive way to the game. Behemoths are a cool ship technology that I don't know the right timing and circumstance where it always makes sense to build them, but my gut is they're too good of a ship, and they provide too many bonuses to your empire to completely ignore them. And I often do. And I still win games, but I think I would do better if I would just invest a little bit of time into grabbing a behemoth or two in the earlier stages of the game. Alright, what else can I do this turn? I don't have a probe. I'm not sure that there's much else to do. I agree with you. Only enabling the Penumbra DLC if you want to have fun with the Shadow Boys does make sense, because they are a fun faction to play with. I really wish that they were the only faction that had hacking, at least from the beginning of the game, and that all the other factions had to like research it and unlock it much later in the tech tree. I think that would make hacking a lot more reasonable. But yeah, the Awakening DLC has no value for me whatsoever. I don't like the faction particularly that it comes with, and the Academy mechanics are complete garbage. I just don't want to play with them. So I refuse. Alright, so we got our ship built. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Nexus. I'm getting to the point where disabling Penumbra is going to be a mainstay of my gameplay. And it's not so much that the hacking system is terrible. It's not terrible, but it's not very intuitive, and I don't feel like there's a lot of counterplay to it. Like, there is some, but it's not clear how it even works. It feels like no matter how many defenses you lay down, you can always be hacked. I just don't know. I think it could be done better. I think they could have done it a lot better. And I think in its current state, it's not good enough. It does feel good on the Shadow Boys, though.
The Hive cares little for the interests of other races.
Okay, so we found orange. Way over here on the other end of our constellation somewhere. That's actually not bad for us. The Hissho being near the Cravers can lead to an extended war, and you can generate a lot of resources on an extended war. War is pretty good for us once we are ready to fight it. Also, notice our Roadrunner doing serious work over here. Getting the bird boys some precious intel.
What is your objective?
Let's see if we can't get this done before we answer their question. Just want to grab that curiosity from you for the free stack of mushrooms. And then I suppose I could send him over here. There's a couple of curiosities this direction that we could try and snag. Yeah, let's do that. We'll just ignore.
What is your objective?
Just ignore them for the time being. Alright, so we don't have a very fertile, interesting start, unfortunately. Not a cluster, but on a stream, which is bad. Somebody says, nothing is more fun than getting harassed by a Sander early game and then getting nagged about daring to chase them away. Or someone getting access to his busted fleet and harassing everyone with it. I agree, those are both not fun. The only thing less fun than that was in my Vaulter series when I literally used boarding pods to take over his entire fleet of busted ships, and then the game decided that I couldn't have them and just said, no, you can't take my ships. So I won multiple battles against them with boarding pods where my boarding pods clearly capture their ships, but I don't get to keep them. That's where I drew the line. You can't have completely busted mechanics that break the game with no explanation as to why. Because any other fleet that I would have done that to, I would have got those ships, and that would have been game-changing for us in that gameplay playthrough. And there's no reason. There's nothing in the game that says, hey, by the way, you can't use boarding pods on Issander's ships. But some stupid piece of code that says that I can't. So, yep, it's got to go. Can't be in the game if it's that bullshit. Alright, I really want to try to get to turn 20 before 2 hours. That's kind of my tentative goal, and then we'll end the first video of this series, which will continue until we either reach a state where the game is pretty well decided or some other reason causes me to want to move on. I can be a little fickle that way. I will say this, I have played many, many more games of endless whatever than I have ever finished. Alright, we are 3 turns away from efficient shielding, 5 turns away from this, and actually I did make a minor boo-boo by not abolishing that law sooner. I don't think it makes sense to actually run any laws. Other than this law, I guess we could run this law for a couple of turns. We don't want to leave it running indefinitely, but in order to cut this down a few turns maybe and get this done before we need to start building ships would be good, and then we can switch back over to the shipbuilding law. Also, I think this ship... Oh dear, what did I do? Ah, here we go. This ship, I think, has been here for a little while, and we just didn't use it. So we need to get that uncovered. Super spud load. Pretty worthless. But there was also a curiosity over here that we can go snag. Good question, Bobby. What is ancestral reverence? I did mention coming back and talking about that at some point. We're 3 turns away from getting cerebral reality, and then there is the option of running ancestral reverence. You can only run this in systems that are not your home system. And essentially, what it allows you to do is it transfers all of the resources to your home system. So it's almost like you build a super tall single system empire and you grab all these territories that just funnel resources back to your home system. This can be very powerful in accelerating the growth of your home system, but it does come at a cost. So the cost is basically it takes 50% of your food and converts it to 25%. And so you lose out on food and industry. Also, it completely stalls the industry of the current system. So if I were to put this into the queue, in fact, I might be able to show it. So if we were to do this, and then look over here, we would see that all of the industry is being consumed here, but this one is actually getting 13.4 industry from Ancestral Reverence. And what that number is, that 13.4, is it's the base industry of the original system minus that penalty that is very poorly worded, where half of it becomes 25%. So it's like essentially 75% of the industry and the food get sent to this system. I think 100% of the dust. Let's see, does it send the dust? Or does it only send industry and food? I'm not seeing the dust being sent or the science. So maybe it doesn't send both of these. There's one way to check real quick, guys. I'll just move this back over here. Yeah, these numbers didn't change. So it only sends food and industry to your main world. You still get 100% of the bonuses over here. So like any science and dust that we would accumulate would still go towards our empire because it's global. So I guess it really doesn't matter that it doesn't get sent over here. Other than this system is likely to have some percent modifiers that would be important. But yeah, we can basically really keep food and industry high in our home system by sending portions of it. The problem is a bunch of this is getting deleted. So we are currently producing 53 and 53, and we can instead get 16 and 13. So it's a pretty big penalty. It's actually 75% of your food and industry is penalized. You're only getting 25% of the resources sent to the other system, which just isn't good enough to warrant doing most of the time. The other thing that this does, though, is it does provide a lower cost to some of our laws, because this system doesn't count against our -1 when this is running. So that's basically what it does, is it funnels industry and food to the main system, but at a pretty hefty penalty. And that's something I'm not quite sure how to make the most use of. The other thing that it sort of makes your starting system, like what planets you roll on this starting system, hugely impact your late game potential. If you get like 3 really good planets that are easy to colonize like this one and have high population limits, then I think maybe there's a case to be made where running that and filling out this system early makes sense. But I don't know. I'm not sure if the math actually works out in our favor that way. Alright, we got 15 more minutes to get through a few more turns. That was weird. Weird little color change there. I don't know what that was about. But we got a probe we can use. Also, because we don't like these guys, we could mess with them. I could potentially blockade their system, but it doesn't look like blockading actually slows their growth. Sometimes it would. If you have enough ships and enough siege value, blockading a system that is an outpost will actually cause it to decolonize over time. But there's no sense in doing that if we can't stop them from growing. We'll take the free technology. Costs us 100 science basically to get a free tech. I think it's worth it. Latest political survey is saying ecologists are really, really popular right now. Not that it matters in a dictatorship. Alright, so we've got 10 food and 5 industry, or 1 industry and 1 food per population pip. This is obviously the better choice. And this guy can scout this really bad system here with 1 planet. A pulso. Okay, pulsos are pretty good. Free population pip. Also, we can blockade this system and send some probes out and see if we can't hit something. That's what we'll do with him for a couple of turns at least, before we send him somewhere else. This also can be done again, and yes, we will just go with more industry. Alright, technology-wise, what are we looking at next? This is already queued up. I think that's probably right. Although galactic commodities, because our dust is getting pretty low, we need the ability to sell things in order to keep up with the income or the expense of all of the ships we're going to build. So maybe I squeeze this in here and then just retrofit my ships. Hard to say. We could also do our little science trick where we get this to 1 turn and then stall, because we don't need to build the ships right this second. We still have several other things that need to get built first. So if I'm capable of remembering, I should probably juggle my science for a couple of turns and try to keep every advantage I can. And in fact, while I'm thinking about it, let's just go ahead and bounce that back to the end of the queue so I don't forget. We can pick it up whenever we want it now.
A special place in the void awaits you.
Okay, they don't like us for some reason. But by turn 17, we've already explored 20% of the galaxy with a single Roadrunner. Well, we had 2 for a very brief period of time. And he is still going strong and has lots of stuff to still uncover, so we'll just keep letting him do his thing. I should check out what he's uncovered every once in a while. We do see a Craver system, early Craver system, 1 pop. Probably just recently got colonized. He's getting to the point in the game where it's getting dangerous to be over here, so there is a chance that we lose this guy. But a single ship uncovering 20% of the galaxy in less than 20 turns is pretty impressive. And you can do this with almost every faction. All you have to do is find whatever ship design they have has the most support modules, give it as many engines as possible, and send it on its way. The reason that works has to do with the fact that the beginning of the game is the safest point at any time for a completely helpless ship to just jet around, and so they just get a lot done in the amount of time that they have. Tundra World. We'll need to pick up the Tundra Tech in order to grab these. how soon do I want to grab that? I've noticed the constellations on the default settings that I've been using have been quite large in most of my games. And I don't know why that is. I think it's just a combination of the map size and the other settings. You can make it smaller or bigger if you want to in the game settings, but yeah, it's a huge constellation, and they're often like this. So, this system is definitely going to benefit from Xeno-industrial infrastructure. The other thing we could do is we could accelerate the rate at which we build ships by building some of them over here. But if I end up building ships over here, I am going to want the big data shipyards so they're getting the bonus levels. Also, we haven't checked on this guy in a while, and it might be time. Not quite. So the problem that we're having here is it's really difficult to continue expanding without having a military fight. Because the main way that you generate more of the key/approval is through military victories in space and on the ground. So until we get a real military fleet moving through somebody else's territory, it's very difficult to colonize quickly. And I'm beginning to wonder if even getting this system as early as we did, instead of letting it like roll down to almost nothing, at least low enough that we could keep the bonus above 75 or 65 or whatever the number is that gives us the percent bonuses to dust and science and food and influence, might be more worth it. It might be worth delaying your second system with this faction more than any other faction. I don't know that that's true, but I suspect it could be. These guys are growing rather quickly, way faster than we are at this point. They are on 3 systems to our 2 with a 4th colony already established. There's a quest marker here. Send a fleet to the quest marker for 30 Hyperion. Yes, we will. Well, there you go. Maybe if you read all your messages, you would know this nose. Focus plasma in 4 turns. Alright, we are 1 turn away from big data shipyards being done, which means I guess it's time to move these boys over so we can start getting our ships built. I think that makes sense. Ooh, look at that. Does it show up when I mouse over here? 17, there we go, cool. 17 dust per turn from the analytical engine. The other thing I wanted to look at is they did fix this. So the analytical engine used to have an upkeep cost of 8 dust per turn, which means you actually didn't get any benefit from the building until you hit 9 curiosities searched, which was kind of shitty. The reason that this is working at the moment has to do with, from what I've read online, the Darth Paul bug that has popped up in some of my games is related to system development. So when you go from system level 1 to system level 2 or system level 3, that's what causes the bug, and it still has not been fixed as far as I'm aware, which is unfortunate. It just prevents you from looking at and selling any of your buildings. But that's a cool little perk. Alright, so we send an expedition. Be ready for a fight. I can grab 100 dust and 5 key. I will probably lose my ship to pirates, or at least be attacked by pirates if I do this. It's probably worth doing. Yeah, we get attacked immediately, which is fine. We can just retreat, except retreating is really bad for us. What are the chances that we have any chance of winning this? 0, basically. If I retreat, we're going to lose some key. Will we lose more than 5? Let's find out. Ouch! We lost 10. So they do make it a pretty big penalty for retreating in this game. Not as big as the original game, but still pretty big penalty. That's kind of bad. That was a net loss in key instead of a net gain. I did get the dust, though. And also 60 more dust on top of that, so we're in a good spot to... 50 titanium would be really good for us. We're in a good spot to retrofit our ships once we get them built. And that will start next turn. Cool. We're going to finish 20 turns in 2 hours. That's about par from the course. Also, we're ready to start building ships, and pretty soon better ships. I'll have to queue up what kind of ships I want. I'm probably going to save that for the next video. Also, my mining operation has finished. And we can get scavenged ram scoops. Get a little bit of key. These are really good engines. I almost always pick this one over this one. I've yet to find any scenario where this makes any sense whatsoever. I can think of a couple of situations where it's more synergistic than it could be, but it's just bad. It's just not as good as this, ever. So we'll take these as our quest. Alright. Is there anything else that I want to do this turn? Yes, I want to send out another probe this way. Hopefully hit something eventually so we can get more roadrunners on the run. Alright. So he managed to get down this lane and then scoot all the way back over here. Still going strong at turn 20. But I think... yeah, we're not going to be able to do this. And actually... before I forget about it, let's abolish this law. Let's pass the lower fleet cost law. And let's go ahead and... we'll end the video by talking a little bit about our ships. Our ships are pretty bad. They're not awful. but they're pretty bad. This ship design's okay. 4 support slots gives it some flexibility. 3 defense slots gives it some survivability. Only a single weapon slot on a broadside mounting is pretty terrible. But it is what it is. What we want to do is we want to design a ship that's going to pass the quest that we have. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1 set of shields, 2 sets of armor. That gives us a defensive capacity of 208. And then with the flat cannon, that gives us a defensive capacity of 298, which is enough to pass the quest. And then we'll just throw our best engine on there and apply the design. We need to build 2 of those ships. So if I go here, I can go ahead and queue up 2 of these. And that's not going to take very long to do. And then we can wait the 3 turns for focused plasma, and that focused plasma will then allow me to build some hawk ships, which I will design at that point in time. So I think this is probably a good place to go ahead and end the video, and we'll pick up next time at the end of turn 20 with the election and the beginning of our first fleet. And with that being said, this has been TheNosePlays. If you're enjoying this series, please let me know. Leave me a comment in the comment section or give me a like or both. Feel free to subscribe so you always get notifications when I do live stream. I don't have a regular schedule. I just do this as a hobby for fun whenever I'm feeling it. So it's a little inconsistent, which is unfortunate. But for those of you who have joined, I appreciate your comments and look forward to them in the future. And we'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day.